Everybody good? Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. As your Attorney General, let me make something very clear right at the start. Here in Connecticut, abortion is safe, legal, and accessible. And let me also be clear, it is the law of the state of Connecticut today, tomorrow, and as long as we're in this fight, that mifepristone and medication abortion is in Connecticut legal, safe, effective, and available, period, full stop. And because of a decision of a United States District Court judge in federal court in Washington, as the result of a lawsuit that I filed with 16 other states and the District of Columbia, that is true here in Connecticut and will be true for some period of time as long as we're in this fight, and we will never back down from this fight. But here we are again, in a fight that nobody wanted, a fight that is not just unwanted, but is utterly unnecessary and unconscionable, and born of now what has become a relentless war on American women and patients. And so we saw on Good Friday, of all days, on Good Friday, two decisions. The first from a federal judge in Texas who wrote this aggressive, ideological decision. It is long, nonsensical, but it's clear where he wanted to go right from the jump. You know, in the first paragraph, he expresses his own frustration. And so it was clear we were not in for legal analysis, but we were in for his opinion. And for so many pages, it took a lot of time from Good Friday to go through every page and every word to try to make sense of it. We have a federal judge in Texas who, as far as I can tell, has no scientific background, second-guessing the FDA. That's right. Casting doubt on a drug, mifepristone, about which there is no doubt that it's safe. It's been safe for decades. It's safer than Tylenol. Okay, and as far as I can tell, there has been no causal connection with any really adverse health effects to a significant degree, but there's no causal connection between any deaths and the use of mifepristone. And yet he tries to concoct this science and cast doubt on this drug that has been used for decades and decades safely by women and patients here in Connecticut and across the country. What is most disturbing about this decision are the references to the worst tropes about women and patients and people in the pro-choice community, in the abortion rights community, who just want to honor and respect the fundamental rights of women, patients, doctors, and healthcare providers. It reflects not just an outdated paternalism, but let's be honest about it, deep-seated misogyny in our law. He invokes an 1873 morality law that was written in an era where men treated women like second-class citizens without rights of their own, like property. Yes, Madam Lieutenant Governor? He invokes, and this is the really hard part to read, he invokes eugenics, right? He invokes references to Nazi ideology. And importantly, you know, from this perch of paternalism, he talks about, well, what about the psychological impact of women after they have a medication abortion, without addressing for a second the psychological impact on women who are forced to carry a baby to term that they do not want. And so here we are with this decision and an injunction that he purports to impose upon women and patients in this country. Well, we've been here way too many times. We were in the fight in Little Sisters, which was the case before Dobbs, We were in the fight in Dobbs, and I told you when Roe fell that we would never back down from this fight. We've also learned that in this fight now, we can't just sit back and take it. We have to fight fire with fire. And that's why I joined with 16 other states and the District of Columbia, and we launched our own offensive in federal court in Washington. And we told the federal judge in that case that the FDA's approach to mifepristone is actually too restrictive, that they were not wrong in approving mifepristone for use. They were right about that. But they invoked requirements known as REMS, R-E-M-S, the risk evaluation and mitigation strategy that imposes restrictions on mifepristone that are scientifically unwarranted, that are unnecessary for a drug that has been used so many countless times, thousands of times, safely by women and patients in Connecticut and across the country. And we said that they should rescind their use of the REMS requirements, and that until they do that, and until that issue is adjudicated, that they should issue an injunction, the judge should issue an injunction maintaining the status quo. And as a result of that, Judge Rice in Washington State Federal Court issued an injunction preserving the use of mifepristone, acknowledging and affirming the science, and making sure for us here in Connecticut, and at least in Connecticut and those 16 other states and the District of Columbia, that mifepristone is still legal, safe, effective, and available. We launched our own attack, our own counteroffensive, because we are not going to take this sitting down. I told you we would fight tooth and nail with everything that we have, and we will. Let me just say that in reading these decisions, in reading about the references to this 1873 morality law, in reading the judge's words in Texas about Nazi ideology and eugenics, and, his parsing of the psychological impact on women as if he knows anything about that, right? And even reading the decision that we like in federal court in Washington about the FDA and its imposition of these unduly restrictive requirements on the use of mifepristone. You just are left with the feeling and understanding that this is just total bullshit, and just reflects this ongoing, deep-seated, abiding, pervasive, pernicious misogyny in our law. And I felt a lot like my good friend Gretchen Raffa. I've told this story before. The first time I met Gretchen was on the front steps of the courthouse in New Haven. We were protesting the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh to the U.S. Supreme Court. I didn't know Gretchen at the time, and she was speaking before me, and I was a human shield blocking anti-abortion activists from interrupting her remarks. But as Gretchen spoke, I saw her getting increasingly upset, and I saw rage and anger and tears coming down her face. But apart from the rage and the anger, I saw power and strength. That's what we have to do every single day in this fight. We have to channel Gretchen's power and strength and commit to each other that we will never, ever, ever back down in this fight, and that we here in Connecticut stand with women, patients, doctors, nurses, and healthcare. So we have a number of guests. We have a really important lineup. Let me invite one of the people who is really on the front lines of this battle, really for patients, and that's Dr. Nancy Stanwood, the Chief Medical Officer of Planned Parenthood. Thank you.
Good morning. I am Dr. Nancy Stanwood. I'm the Chief Medical Officer of Planned Parenthood of Southern New England. I've been a practicing OBGYN and a proud abortion provider for over 20 years. And it's my honor to provide my patients with the care they know they need so they can live their lives with dignity and they can thrive. As a physician and as a person of science, I am outraged that a federal judge in Texas with no medical background, no experience in caring for patients, has issued a ruling that seeks to remove mifepristone from our modern medical practice, and not just in Texas, but in all states, including Connecticut. Let me be medically crystal clear. The medical evidence is overwhelming that mifepristone for early medication abortion is safe and effective, with an enviable safety record of 99% safety. It has been used by more than 5 million people in the U.S. since its FDA approval in 2000 to safely end an unwanted pregnancy. Mifepristone is safer than common medications like penicillin, Tylenol, and yes, Viagra. And in the medical community, mifepristone for medical abortion is not controversial. It is the medical standard of care. So I should not have to be here speaking to you today. I should be in the office caring for patients. I should not have to be here because this decision is not about medical science or about what's best for patients. This decision is pure politics. This Texas judge ignored all the evidence and science and declared the FDA approval of mifepristone from 2000 unlawful, seeking to wipe out 23 years of experience in the medical community. This one activist judge ruled in favor of anti-abortion organizations and grounded his decision in junk science and anti-abortion rhetoric. His decision to retroactively block the FDA's approval of mifepristone is unprecedented and could be deeply harmful for nationwide abortion access and also for miscarriage care that mifepristone is a part of. Because of this decision, if allowed to go into effect, it could make it more difficult for patients seeking medication abortion to access care amidst an already crisis situation for abortion access across the country because of the overturning of Roe v. Wade last June and because of many states banning or severely restricting abortion care. At Planned Parenthood of Southern New England, we see patients every day who come to us for abortion care, knowing that abortion is the right decision for them, and that having an early abortion with mifepristone medication will meet their needs. It is a frightening moment in our country when a single judge can practice medicine from the bench for the entire country, removing an FDA-approved common, safe medication for purely political and ideological reasons. This demonstrates that the anti-abortion forces seek to end abortion nationwide, including in states like Connecticut, where we respect the rights of people to make their own private medical decisions. And so I want to thank Attorney General Tong for your unwavering commitment to defend reproductive rights and freedom for the people of Connecticut and across the country. We are grateful to you for joining the Washington State case to ensure patients in Connecticut can continue to access mifepristone for early medication abortion. And I also want to thank, though he's not here, Senator Blumenthal, and I wish him a speedy orthopedic recovery, but I want to thank him for his unwavering commitment to reproductive rights through his entire career. I also want to thank you, Governor Lamont, and your administration, as well as our legislative champions, for continuing to demonstrate why Connecticut has long been a leader in protecting reproductive rights and freedom. At Planned Parenthood of Southern New England, we will continue to do everything possible to provide our patients with timely abortion care, including the method that is best for their circumstances. Medication abortion with mifepristone remains legal and available in all 14 of our healthcare centers in Connecticut. We believe deeply in the right of all people, no matter who they are, where they live, what they earn, to make their own personal decisions about their bodies, their families, and their lives, free from shame, stigma, and political interference. We will continue to provide care no matter what. Thank you.
Now the Commissioner of Public Health, Dr. Manisha Jitani.
You heard from a doctor who provides abortion care to patients. She's said it all. She's been on the front line and knows what it takes. But let's be clear, for a woman of childbearing age, right now, this is a scary time. You're left trying to figure out what your future holds. The lawyers will be fighting this fight in Connecticut. The doctors are here to take care of the patients. We, in public health, always strive to make sure that health care is delivered in a safe way. And given our laws in the land of Connecticut, we will be able to continue doing that. Lots remains to be sorted out. That'll take its time. But right now, if you're a patient that needs this type of care, seek it out. Go to our friends and providers at Planned Parenthood. Call your doctor. You have access, you have resources. Do not feel let down because there are people that are fighting for you. So you can make the health choices you need to, and we can ensure that you will be able to receive that in a safe way. Last thing I want to just say is, other than just misogyny that we've heard about, we know that people with less access and less resources who have been disadvantaged in many ways in our society will suffer the most from these types of decisions. Let's call it for what it is. And that's why this fight is so important, because as confusing as it is right now, as difficult as it is to figure out what you can do to take care of yourself, now you add more complications to people who are trying to get up and go to work and take care of their kids and take care of putting food on the table and then having to deal with complicated decisions as well. So we are fortunate to have the support of our state legislators, our representatives at the federal government, our governor, our attorney general, who will continue this fight, and we in public health will make sure that places are safe so that you can get the care that you need. Thank you.
Thank you. Now the Lieutenant Governor, Susan Bysiewicz.
Thank you so much, Mr. Attorney General. On Friday, we saw an infuriating, flagrant, and outrageous attack on women's rights and on access to reproductive health care. And we just can't stand by and allow the personal opinion of one anti-choice judge to take precedence over more than 2 decades of scientific research and medical data showing that mifepristol is safe and effective. 5 million women in our country, millions across the world have used it safely and effectively. And if we allow this ruling to stand, women will have no choice but to get surgical abortions or use a less effective drug. This is a terrible precedent because it has consequences far beyond access to abortion care. It has consequences for vaccines, for Alzheimer's drugs, for insulin. Does that mean some federal judge can overturn the use of safe, FDA-approved medications? Our Attorney General has called this decision misogynistic. Well, I'll call it racist and homophobic in addition to sexist, because this decision could disproportionately affect women of color, our transgender population, women in rural areas, and indigenous women as well. And one of the reasons this is just so outright infuriating is we are at a moment here in Connecticut and in our country when we are seeing healthcare access being limited because hospitals are consolidating. We see this right here in our state, but it's happening everywhere. And so here's the good news. I gave you all the bad news, but here's the good news. In Connecticut, we are leading the way for women's reproductive rights and health care. Our governor, over a month ago, joined with 19 other governors across the country to say that they would stand for women's reproductive rights. I have gotten together 21 other colleagues who are lieutenant governors across the country, many of them are women, to form a women's reproductive coalition. And our Attorney General is fighting on every front in courts across the country to safeguard our rights. And our legislators are continuing to lead the way to make sure healthcare access is expanded, not contracted. And so our message to women in Connecticut and to women across the country is we will take care of your reproductive health care here in Connecticut. If you are being denied access in any other state, please come to Connecticut. We will make sure you get the critical care that you need. And we will fight. We will continue to fight. We will use every tool in the toolbox, whether it's at the ballot box, whether it's in our state legislature, whether it is in the United States Congress, or whether it is in courthouses in this state or across the country. We will stand up for women. We will fight for basic fundamental rights in our state. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, Liz Gustafson, State Director of Pro-Choice Connecticut.
Good morning. First and foremost, it is important to note that regardless of Friday's critical and conflicting legal decisions, that the current state of mifepristone has not yet changed. Friday's ruling out of Texas is yet another devastating attack on abortion in an effort to eliminate access to an extremely common medication used in abortion care and miscarriage management. Additionally, while we are deeply grateful for the swift action by the Department of Justice and for the steadfast leadership of Attorney General Tong and attorneys generals across the country, we recognize how this only adds more confusion and stress in an already fractured patchwork of abortion access. Make no mistake, abortion is already safe, and medication abortion accounts for more than half of all abortions today. Mifepristone has helped ensure that patients are able to make their own private medical decisions and has expanded access to reproductive health care, as it has been used by more than 5 million people since the FDA approved it 23 years ago. The most significant threat to the health of individuals in our communities is legal risk, which is a direct result of anti-abortion extremists' agenda to criminalize abortion and pregnancy outcomes nationwide. Let me be clear. People who can be pregnant and get pregnant should be the sole decision makers when it comes to their pregnancies, not politicians, not the courts, and not law enforcement. We deserve better than political interference and fear of criminalization because of the outcomes of our pregnancies. We deserve better than confusion, stigma, shame, and misinformation. I would not be here if it weren't for my medication abortion in 2018. These are my medication abortion instructions from 2018. All people who have abortions should be able to access the full spectrum of care options so they can choose the method of abortion that works best for their circumstances, no matter who they are, where they live, or how much money they make. No matter the ruling in these cases or in any case in the future, alongside our champions, many of whom are with us today, and allies, Pro-Choice Connecticut will keep fighting for a world where we can self-manage our abortions, access in-clinic abortion care at any stage of pregnancy in the communities that we call home, and fully determine if, when, or how we start or grow our families with safety, dignity, and abundance. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from the Comptroller, Sean Scanlon. I wanted to make sure that the Comptroller was here because he's our state's chief healthcare officer, and this is entirely about healthcare. So with that, let me invite Comptroller Scanlon up.
On Friday, millions of women across Connecticut and the United States got that news alert that so many of them are getting used to seeing, and they asked themselves a simple question: when will this end? When will this end? When will we stop with this? And sadly, the answer in this country is it's not going to stop. Because there is a set of people from a fringe element of the conservative movement that are waging a culture war on anyone who doesn't look like them, who doesn't have the same morals that they think that they have, doesn't love the people that they love. This will not end. And we're here today to tell people in Connecticut that our fight will not end either. Because for as much as people in this country, and this judge doesn't want to hear it, this is what I know is true. Health care is a human right. Yes. Health care is a human right, and abortion is health care. And for as long as I am the person who runs the largest health plan in Connecticut as the state comptroller, I will make sure that we do everything we can in Connecticut to say that very clearly to the people of this state, but to the people of the United States who are watching and are feeling afraid because they don't have the same people that are standing up for them right now. And so we're here today to reaffirm what we've stood up at this group many times to do, which is to tell the women of Connecticut that we are not just going to shrink from this fight. We are not going to let an unelected judge dictate health care for the United States of America. We are going to fight back. We've got an attorney general that fights back every day. We've got a governor that is leading the nation when it comes to this. We have legislators like Matt Blumenthal, Jillian Gilchrist, all the people who are here who are not just going to stop at the status quo. They're going to keep fighting to make sure that that human right of health care remains safe, legal, and accessible to the women of this state and the women of the United States of America. That is the fight that we are in forever, and that is the fight that we are going to ultimately win. Thank you.
Thank you. And now the co-chair of our state legislature Reproductive Rights Caucus, State Representative Matt Blumenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. And I just want to recognize a few of my colleagues from the caucus who are here. Representative Krista McCarthy-Vahey, Representative Ann Hughes, and my co-chair, Representative Jillian Gilchrist, couldn't be here today, but conveys her regrets. What we saw on Friday was an egregious abuse of judicial power in the United States. A single federal district judge in Texas tried to essentially ban access to medication abortion in the entire country in complete contravention of the facts, the science, and the law. Now, thanks to the proactive work of our Attorney General, that's not the case here in Connecticut and in many states across the country because they sued proactively and ensured that that district judge in Washington state handed down a countervening opinion in the same day. So mifepristone is safe, legal, and accessible today here in Connecticut, just as it was on Friday morning, and it will continue to be. But let's not for a minute discount the gravity of what has happened here, or the gravity of the fight that we are facing. Extreme elements of the anti-choice movement will stop at nothing to deprive women and others of access to the health care that they need and deserve. They will not hesitate to pervert the law and our judicial system. They will not hesitate to bring the entire system for approval of medication down around our heads. They are single-minded and they will not stop, and we need to be equally dedicated and equally forceful. In every election, in every decision, in every appointment across this country, there is a question that every official must answer, and that question is, will you stand up for an individual's decision to make the fundamental decision that belongs to them, when or whether to be pregnant? That decision belongs to the person who can be pregnant and no one else. And here in the Reproductive Rights Caucus of our General Assembly, we've already taken action, significant action, to protect individuals' rights and access to that health care here in our state. And by the way, when we passed our nation-leading Reproductive Freedom Defense Act last year, we heard arguments that this was unnecessary. No one would ever try to attack access to abortion or reproductive health care in other states. Well, last week, not only did we see this decision out of Texas, we also saw a governor in Idaho sign a law to criminalize interstate travel to access an abortion, even where it is legal and safe, as it is here in Connecticut. So make no mistake, we will stand up and defend women's access to reproductive health care here in the state of Connecticut and across the country, and we will provide every tool to them and their medical professionals that they need and deserve. And we will defend it against politicians, no matter whether they're wearing suits or dresses or black robes, because that is what the people of America deserve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me note that Senator Blumenthal was scheduled to be here and was a co-headliner with us. As you all know, he had a little mishap, and so Matt, our best to your dad and your family, and I know that Senator Blumenthal is on the mend. I will note, I was with him, we were all with him, and after he fell, he got right back up and finished the parade and the speaking program with a broken femur. So
I will say that probably the most painful part of this experience for him so far is that he's not here with us today.
too true, probably. With that, it's my honor to introduce the governor.
This is supposed to be a weekend of hope and celebration. Passover and Easter, and Huskies and Bobcats. And then this judge from Amarillo, Texas comes in. You know, what the heck is going on? I mean, we just went through this with the Dobbs decision. We thought that was 50 years of settled law. And all of a sudden, the courts I thought were there to protect our freedoms are coming in and taking away basic, fundamental freedoms, freedom from women, reproductive freedoms. And now you've got this judge doing the same thing. Used to be they said, oh, we're going to leave it up to the states. He's not doing that. He wants to outlaw these pharmaceutical abortions across the country, and we're not going to let it happen. Susan has stood up. She's got the lieutenant governors organized. I'm working with the governors right now. I got to tell you, William Tong is fighting for those attorney generals. And we got to make this a bipartisan event. I want everybody involved in this. Red state and blue state, legislators on both sides of the aisle. This used to be, it was 7-2. Wasn't it down there when the original Roe v. Wade was done? That was on a bipartisan basis. I used to hear Republicans say, oh, I don't like legislating from the bench. And come on. And they used to talk about individual freedoms and individual liberties. These should be bipartisan issues where we stand up and protect a woman's right to choose. I want to say, as you've heard, we went through this, Susan and I, after the Dobbs decision, and our phones were ringing off the hook, and the hospitals were, what does this mean? Is this going to stop if I lost my rights? No. Not here. Not here in the state of Connecticut. Nothing has changed, including being able to take mifepristone. How'd I do? I'm going to call it the Liberty Pill. It's about reproductive freedom. It's about reproductive choice. It's about making sure you determine when you want to start a family, not some bureaucrat, not some judge does that. Nothing's going to change here in Connecticut. Nothing's going to change as long as the people behind me are standing tall. And now, Attorney General, we need you to help take the lead on a federal basis. And you're right, and working with Dick Blumenthal. I mean, that guy's amazing. Talk about a celebration. There he was, marching in that parade, breaks his leg, keeps on going. What a Marine. He never misses an event, by the way, but he would never miss an event like this. He has been a leader going back, and he's going to be fighting in the U.S. Senate every day. And I want the House, I want the Senate down there in Washington, D.C., pass a law that says abortion rights, reproductive rights are the law of the land, and no court, no judge is going to take them away. Not going to happen here in Connecticut. God bless you all.
Questions?
Sure. Does that 50% number hold? Could you step to the mic? Does that 50% number for medication abortions hold true in Connecticut? Is that the percentage? Do you have those numbers by any chance? You know better. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
So across the country, of people who have abortion care, just over half have it with medication abortion. In Connecticut, that number is even a little bit higher.
And if this decision was upheld by the Supreme Court, what is your medical assessment? Would it push patients into riskier ways of obtaining abortions that would be surgical or aspiration?
If mifepristone becomes unavailable, which by the amazing work of our advocates here, I am hopeful it will not, but if it were to, we could still provide an alternative for medication abortion with misoprostol only.
It's not as effective, right?
It's slightly less effective. It's not as effective. The side effects are more. So it's certainly not what I want for my patients. I want them to be able to access the most effective method so that they can complete their medication abortion effectively, quickly, and safely.
How concerned are you that CVS and Walgreens, which have already been pressured by Republican attorneys general not to sell this drug in states where it's illegal and restricted, how concerned are you as noted as Attorney General?
So we're concerned, obviously, and obviously deeply disappointed that my colleagues have taken that action. We're pushing back on that. We're in communication with all of the big pharmacy chains, advising them of their rights and obligations here in Connecticut. And I think we have a call scheduled with Walgreens shortly. And so we're all over them.
Well, what's the alternative if this goes all the way to the Supreme Court and you lose here? I mean,
well, I think you just heard from Dr. Stanwood. We're very confident in our position. We're very confident in the judge's decision in federal court in Washington. In our case, you know, it's hard to overstate how deeply flawed this decision is. Dobbs is flawed, but this is borderline nonsensical, you know, in its analysis of the law and the regulatory process. And it is an affirmatively and aggressively not conservative decision, by the way, right? I mean, a federal judge, conservative judge, should be sitting back and deferring as a matter of law to the scientific judgment of the federal agency entrusted with making judgments about medicine, and that's the FDA. And he clearly does not do that. He steps in and substitutes not just his own opinion, but his own science, which by the way, most of the science in the decision is greatly outweighed by the body of real science that has found that over 20 years of use of mifepristone is safe and also not likely to produce adverse health effects. And so this is a decision that, in my view, of all the decisions we've read, and we've read a bunch of bad ones in the past year, plus this is one that it's going to be hard for it to stand up.
put it this way, what do you anticipate would happen? Well, are you concerned about going before the United States Supreme Court after the Dobbs decision and arguing this case and receiving a fair hearing and decision?
Yes, that is a risk, but we are confident in our position, and we're going to win.
Do you agree that this was judge shopping and that what we're
Yes.
seeing are
Yes, absolutely. Yes. They found just the right judge.
Can somebody please tell me, regarding last year's safe harbor law, what the percentage is of out-of-state people coming in for medical care now?
Planned Parenthood can tell you that because they've seen more patients, right?
Since the Dobbs decision, we have seen an increase in people coming from states where abortion is now banned. We've seen also an increase in the average distance that our patients need to travel to come to us. It's actually tripled. And I just think about our amazing healthcare teams who are there to meet their needs when they arrive, and our amazing abortion navigator services that help people find the resources to come to their appointment, to travel, to stay overnight, to have transportation, to have support for childcare. I'm deeply grateful to our teams for being there to meet the patient's needs when they come. Because yes, we have seen an increase in people coming from banned states for care.
Can you give me any basic data, please? Any numbers, any percentage?
Yeah. Of people coming from out of state, we've seen a 30% increase.
On that point, there was a proposal in the legislature, as you all know, about $2 million. Bring us up to speed on where that is. Did Human Services not approve that? And just where is that whole proposal? The latest.
Yeah. So we anticipate that funding moving through the budgetary process.
So, Governor, meaning approach is going to vote on it next, or what do you mean by that?
I mean, I can't comment on it further, but that's the anticipated
Governor,
outcome.
you proposed a $2 million fund in your budget, but for the life of me, I can't find any legislation proposing how you expect to form that program. So can you give us an idea of what your administration would like to see?
Yeah, if we can get that proposal through the legislature, it's going through the budget process right now. We'll be working with the advocates right here to make sure that people around the country, not just in Connecticut, can exercise their reproductive rights.
Okay, well, put it this way. Since it's one of your priorities, is it and the Democratic majority's priority, what would you put the chances of this funding actually making it into the 24-25 budget?
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Governor, whatever the Supreme Court ultimately decides, what is your political assessment of this decision on politics in Connecticut and nationally? We are ramping up to a presidential cycle.
I think it's a big deal. I mean, you're upsetting, in this case, 23 years of a drug that's been very effective at providing women the reproductive choices they need. Dobbs goes back 50 years. I think a lot of people worry, what next for a judge? You know, maybe they don't like contraception. Where are they going to stop? Maybe they don't like vaccines. How often are they going to start overruling the FDA, not just what states want to do, like Connecticut?
Governor, there are a number of proposals now, bipartisan, to access birth control. Some of those are Republican proposals to have birth control vending machines on college campuses. Where is that, and are you on board with all of those proposals?
Look, I'm on board with making it easier for people to access their full range of reproductive choices, easier to get this, you know, without a prescription right at the pharmacy. What you mentioned in terms of access at our universities, I think it makes sense. This is health care, as Sean Scanlon said, and I want this broadly available to everybody.
Do you think that'll happen this legislative session?
I do.
Mr. Tong, is there any broader issue here about whether or not there should be legal challenges to FDA decisions beyond this? I believe there were some Democratic attorney generals who at least spoke about challenging the FDA on opioids. I'm not suggesting you were among them, but in the bigger picture, should this be a firm line that the FDA decision should not be subjected to
Well,
this kind of
to be fair, we're challenging FDA in the Washington case and FDA's unduly restrictive use of REMS standards for mifepristone. And so, no, there should not be a bright line that you can never challenge a federal agency and FDA. There's a process for that. But federal judges should not be second-guessing the scientific judgment of scientists. That has been confirmed, by the way, 4 times. It wasn't like, if you listen to Judge Kaczmarek and his decision, I think the way he characterizes it is this was a rushed, botched approval 20 years ago that has just been on the shelf unchallenged since then. That's total nonsense, right? It was not only approved through the proper process and fully approved and vetted 20 plus years ago, but has been reconsidered 4 times. And by the way, it has this unduly restrictive and onerous REMS infrastructure on top of it that makes it even harder than we think it should be for patients to access the drug. And so the idea that it has not been subject to scientific scrutiny and doesn't hold up under peer review and the science is just wrong.
Isn't the weakness of his case is that he's not representing any plaintiff or someone who's had an adverse effect, and there's no data to prove what he's saying?
Yeah, and well, I'd like to think it's not his case, but yeah, I question whether, frankly, the doctors who brought this suit have standing, and he found that they did, and that they have any right to inject what somebody called junk science into this process, but he bought it. And unfortunately, that's why we couldn't take this sitting down. And we had to launch our own offensive in federal court in Washington because we knew that, frankly, this was going off the rails in Texas.
So there's been some suggestion that perhaps the FDA not abide by a Supreme Court decision that goes against the approval. What do you think of that?
I can't speak for FDA, but I think FDA should do the right thing.
And that means?
I think mifepristone should be safe, legal, and accessible in this country, period, full stop.
The question was, if the decision goes against the approval of the drug, it's been suggested that the FDA ignore the Supreme Court decision.
We're not there yet, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that mifepristone is accessible and available and safe for all the people in this state that need it.
The judge stayed his decision pending appeal.
Yep.
So far, that would go to the circuit court.
Yep.
That covers Texas. Okay, there's been no indication yet it's going directly to the Supreme Court.
No indication. We're in the Texas case now, actually. On Easter, the Solicitor General and I, Josh Perry, joined with New York, and we're part of a leadership team that will weigh in Texas and join with the federal government. I anticipate that it is 17, 18, 20-something AGs who are together on this.
What is the time frame? I mean, there's a lot going on here, I think, EPA commissioners have passed. So you have 2 different lawsuits, right? One is encouraging more access, one is trying to deny access. Courts take a long time, but there's others who feel because of the significance of this, it can go faster. I mean, what do people take away from all this stuff going on?
Yeah. What they should take away from all of this is what we've said over and over again, and that is that mifepristone is safe, legal, effective, and available here in Connecticut. And as far as we're concerned, it's going to stay that way. We now have 2 competing injunctions, one that purports from Texas to technically stay the approval. It's a bit contorted of mifepristone, pending appellate review by the 5th Circuit. And then we have another injunction by a federal judge in Washington State with equal authority to the federal judge in Texas, a federal district court judge in Washington who's issued an injunction making it clear that mifepristone will remain safe, legal, effective, and available in 17 states, including Connecticut and the District of Columbia. He declined to issue a nationwide injunction in our case. So it's hard for me to forecast what is going to happen next procedurally. It will depend on what the 5th Circuit does. It will depend on what the FDA does in our case. And so we'll keep you in the loop on these developments as they proceed. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to approach it. I don't want to speak for FDA. I don't represent FDA. I haven't spoken to FDA. Oh, well, yes, they're appealing the 5th Circuit decision for sure, if that was your question. And that's what I was saying. We're in that with the federal government. Good?
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.